Hello, and welcome to Let My People Eat, a podcast that provides satisfying talk about kosher nutrition. Here we clear through the clutter of nutrition speak, arm you with the clarity and confidence to eat, feel, and be your healthiest every day. I am Jill Sharfman, a board-certified holistic nutritionist living in Los Angeles.
And I'm Dr. Andrea Moskowitz, a neuroscientist and psychiatrist in Los Angeles. I use my training and experience to integrate positive lifestyle changes into my patients' lives.
Hey, Andrea.
Hey, Jill. How's it going?
It's going okay. So have you ever heard of the word orthorexia?
Yes, I have.
You have. So
Yes.
Orthorexia is a term first coined by the American physician Steve Bratman in 1997, so
Right.
pretty recently.
Right.
It comes from the Greek word ortho, which means right, and orexia, meaning appetite. Okay, so unlike anorexia, which focus on restricting food in order usually to achieve a certain body shape
Right.
that somebody wants, orthorexia restricts foods that are clean, healthy, or wholesome.
Right.
So an example might be somebody who will only eat organically. And if they have the option, they won't. Yes.
Right. Although that's not necessarily, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
A problem. Yeah, I think it goes deeper. I think that's how it starts for a lot of people, you know?
Right.
Just like anorexia for a lot of people starts with restricting food, and then it becomes they're restricting more and more and more. So with the orthorexia, it's they start, maybe we say, okay, I'm just going to eat organic. Okay.
Right.
In the United States, it's not even that's not difficult to do. In some parts of the world, that could be almost impossible, but then they start restricting more and more and more. And it's, I think, what you mentioned, that perception, like this is the pure food, the clean food, the good. It's like it gives like a value to it.
Virtuousness,
the morality.
Right.
It becomes like almost a moral thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay. Great. Okay. So I want to talk more about this because it is something that's becoming more part of the conversation, and
Right.
I'm not sure everybody's familiar with it. We're going to talk to our guest today. Rachel Tuckman is a licensed mental health counselor with over 10 years of experience. She has worked with many diverse populations, including kids with behavioral struggles, overwhelmed parents looking for skills and support, teens struggling with the pressure of adolescence, and life in general. Rachel is a health at every size aligned clinician and dedicates a lot of her time out of the office to educating parents and kids on the importance of body respect and the behaviors that truly honor our health. Hey, Rachel.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Thank
So
you.
is orthorexia something that you see either in your younger patients or other people that you come across?
Orthorexia is something that I see very commonly, yes, in my work with women mainly, with body image issues and disordered eating. I don't see it as strongly with kids, but there is a little bit of hints of it in kids, but that's generally because they're picking it up from their parents and they're kind of just echoing what they learn at home, which is concerning because, I'm sure we'll talk about it more. We know that orthorexia is a form of an eating disorder, and it can lead to more severe eating disorder behavior that could be potentially fatal.
Right. So,
Right.
Andrea, is orthorexia classified as an eating disorder
Well, by whom?
in the DSM?
In the DSM. No, unfortunately it's not in the DSM. It's not even there as something to be studied. Although people have come up with different ideas about it. Sometimes look, the DSM is
Needs work.
needs work. Right. Well, the DSM is not the 10 Commandments. So the DSM is constantly being worked on and changed. So I wouldn't just go by DSM.
Right.
Because
Okay.
at the end of the day, the issue becomes, is this pattern of behaviors that the person's engaging in, is it interfering with their life, with their daily functioning? Is it, which is bad enough, putting them at the risk of serious health consequences. So for example, like malnutrition can be one thing. So I think that's more important. And it seems to be like kind of, sorry, I'm like stepping all over, I guess, but like sort of related to eating disorders and obsessive compulsive disorder.
Okay.
Which,
So yeah,
which are tied
look into
together,
that.
which are tied together themselves. The other thing I just wanted to bring up though, and it may be like your practice. It seems like it's mostly women, but I was reading across the board. It seems like this is equally common in males and females, unlike some other eating disorders. So, for example, I mean, there are males with anorexia, but it is predominantly
a female.
Yeah,
right. So, Rachel,
women.
who will develop the disorder? Because a lot of people try and eat healthy. Angie and I try and eat healthy, but it doesn't make that slide into orthorexia. So, who is at risk for developing this?
That's actually a really great question. The people who tend to be more susceptible to orthorexia development are actually, interestingly enough, doctors, dietitians, right? And a lot of dietitians, if you speak to them, certainly those that are in the health at every size, intuitive eating kind of mode of treatment, will tell you that they kind of came to health at every size and intuitive eating through discovering their own dysfunctional relationship with food. And they came to dietetics because of their obsession with weight or weight loss or eating healthy foods. So they kind of came to working in nutrition because of their obsession with food and weight. And then, it turned into they learned about health at every size and intuitive eating, and they kind of healed from their illness that way. But dietitians, doctors, they tend to be at higher risk. Students as well. And men and women, like you were saying, Andrea, are equally affected by orthorexia. And we do see a lot of men in this space because orthorexia is a more acceptable form, like being obsessed with your health, because you're not talking about your weight and your body necessarily.
No.
Even though there is an underlying, usually, obsession with health and with your body and with your size. But it's more acceptable to talk about, clean ingredients and what fuels your body rather than, how to lose weight and make yourself smaller. So it tends to be kind of across the board right now that we see it equally in men and women.
Yeah. Right. So I'm sorry.
I would also think too that, look, some people just do tend to be more obsessive and more sort of like all or none kind of things, like when they do things, and not so comfortable with like moderation or middle. So I would think somebody with those underlying temperaments, which by the way is a lot of physicians, kind of have that like sort of OCD-ish.
Yeah, someone with a tendency towards anxiety, OCD, perfectionism. Which is, again, we see that with people who ends up having eating disorders. Like there is very much
it's the feeling of out of controlness, low self-esteem. I'm sure we can get into social media might have an impact with all the wellness influencers that are out there right now. But
I agree with you. But I also think when people think obsessively, it's not just about. It used to be an anxiety disorder, but now it's like broken out by itself, which is probably a good thing. But it's also it's the way people think. It's a cognitive thing, also of like how they approach things and how they think about things. So it's sort of like, well, if I'm going to do it, then it should be like this, and it should be like this all the time, and that's the only way it's going to work.
Right. Yeah. It's the control.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it also just gets into just the way they think about things. Yeah.
Right.
People also who have like a history of an eating disorder, so let's say they are recovered from anorexia or bulimia, sometimes they tend to go into, or they're more susceptible to orthorexia, because we kind of think like, oh, I'm just being healthy and like now I'm taking care of myself and I want to make sure that the nutritional content or the ingredients are good for me and I'm getting what I need. And sometimes that can be a slippery slope. For people who have had that history. It kind of, they tend to increase. We see the increase of orthorexia after, dealing with bulimia or anorexia. So they are more susceptible to it.
Yeah. I think also it's a lot easier when they're out in social situations to say, oh, I can't eat the bread because I'm gluten free. And like people won't really bat an eye, whereas if they're out with their friends and they eat out and then they might excuse themselves to go to the bathroom or limit what they're eating, is going to be more of a red flag. So I feel like orthorexia is a little bit more hidden.
It's a more socially acceptable way to kind of express those anorexia symptoms, right? Because it's okay to be like, oh, like I'm cutting out sugar, or I'm not having gluten, or soy makes my stomach hurt, or dairy, it does a number on me. And listen, I think for some people, those really are valid. If gluten is people have serious allergies or medical conditions, that there are certain foods that they cannot eat. So we're not even talking about medical issues right now. But sometimes, usually how orthorexia starts is because people are having some kind of symptom and they end up going to a doctor. And unfortunately, sometimes doctors really just treat symptoms and not the root, and that frustrates people. So they'll end up going to maybe a functional medicine doctor and, or some kind of nutritionist or dietitian who will then, recommend eliminating things just to see if things get better.
Right.
And that's kind of where things can get off track, because I eliminated gluten and my symptoms are still bad. I eliminated dairy and my symptoms are still bad. I eliminated soy. And then slowly but surely, you're like eating nothing and your symptoms aren't getting any better. But then what people don't understand is a lot of time, like that anxiety of like, my body is still hurting and I'm not getting better. Sometimes that's just fueling the symptoms and making it worse.
Right.
So eliminating more and more and more is only making things worse. It's not you're missing like, we can't figure it out. It could be that elimination is causing that increased inflammation and that those symptoms in your body.
Right. Do you also see where, somebody starts and they're like, okay, like I'm going to eat, healthier. So they get rid of something. And then they're like, yeah, I do feel better. And then they read about something else like, oh, maybe if I do that, then I'll feel even better and better and better and better. And it's like, it doesn't stop.
Yeah, that's usually how it starts. It starts with like, I cut sugar out and I have so much more energy. Like, let me see, I read this article about dairy and how humans are the only, mammals or whatever, the only beings that consume like animal products. Let me cut that out. And then, it just becomes this like spiral of then there's literally nothing left for them to eat.
Right. Okay. So one of the first signs of, because I do have the list, is what we just spoke about, is the elimination of entire food groups. Then there's the anxiety about how the food is prepared, what oils are used and things like that, which can then lead to avoidance of social events.
Right.
They're afraid. What about the feelings of guilt and shame when they don't adhere? So when they, let's call it fall off the wagon and they do indulge.
Yeah. So a lot of the time people will have that when we deem certain foods as like good or bad or toxic versus like pure or clean, that makes us feel, right? There's like this kind of like you were saying earlier, like this moral or, like a judgment that we put on ourselves. Well, if I eat clean and if I eat well, then like, obviously I'm a good person. And when I don't eat well, I'm out of control and I'm a bad person and I have no willpower and I don't care about my health and I don't care about the environment or whatever it is. So I think that when people become obsessed with looking at ingredients, and again, not for nutritional purposes to know, like I want to include more of this in my diet or, I'm allergic to this, but really because they are worried about what it means to ingest certain things, that really takes a toll on our mental and physical health. And I think it's so important also to kind of highlight that mental and physical health really are one and the same. They're not two separate things. The mind-body connection is very real. Right. It's very real. And I think people don't understand that. And there was actually a really interesting study that they did, I think in Thailand in the early 2000s, where they gave Swedish and they gave people in Thailand like food, like salad and Thai food. And they wanted to see like the absorption of nutrients based on like the food that they gave them. So they gave these women in Thailand like a salad and then they gave them Thai food and they absorbed more nutrients and had more health benefits from the Thai food, which was objectively not healthy because it's greasy and full of oil and it's carbs or whatever versus the salad, which we would think is healthier. Right. And then when they gave the second test that they did, or the second trial that they did, they mashed up the Thai food. And so it was like a gross texture and it looked disgusting. And they gave it to them and these women ate it and they were not enjoying the food. And they saw that even with that same Thai food where they did absorb those nutrients, they absorbed less nutrients when it looked gross and they weren't enjoying it. So that like food satisfaction that we get when we're enjoying our food and when we like our food and when we feel good about our food, that's very important. So if you're stressing about ingredients and you're nervous about what you're putting in your body, even if you're eating the objectively healthier food, right? I'm eating salad or I'm having tuna with low-fat mayo, you might not be doing something good for your body because if up here it's stressful and miserable, you're not doing anything good for yourself. So that mind-body connection is so important, and we can't discount that. Health is so much more than what you're eating,
Right.
and how you're moving.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to give a quote from Nigella Lawson. She's a British chef, cook. She's written lots of cookbooks. She's very fun. She's very outspoken. She wrote in 2016, "Food is not dirty. The pleasures of the flesh are essential to life. We cannot control life by controlling what we eat."
Right.
Yeah. And she's very fun. You brought up something also when we were talking about feeling of guilt and shame. I feel also that people judge then other people who are not being super careful about what they eat. And
So,
go ahead.
So no, that's actually one of the signs of orthorexia, when you're constantly looking at and judging what other people eat. And that generally tends to come from our own insecurities and even like sadness about like restricting. So when we see someone eating a donut, right? So there was this whole thing with Krispy Kreme giving out a donut as like, hooray for getting your vaccine. Yeah. So people were freaking out about that. A donut's going to kill you. You're rewarding people for doing something life-saving with something that's life-threatening. And I just thought that reaction, it was so interesting. Like, first of all, like one donut is not going to kill you. And when we think that way, that's really a problem. But
wait, they were saying one donut a day
for
the year.
No, it was just one donut. It wasn't every day. They were offering one donut if you came in with your vaccine card. I mean, I guess you could go every day, but the offer was just bring your vaccine card, show it, and you get a free donut. It didn't say every day. I think people thought that. It didn't say every day on their post that I saw on social
So the
media.
article I saw in the New York Times, the one that I reacted to, said one donut a day for the year. You can come and get as many as you want.
Right. So I don't think Krispy Kreme actually said that.
Okay.
I think that's what people assumed. So, because if you read their post, that they just said, show us your card and you get a free donut. It didn't say every day, all of 2021. It said it expires in 2021 or whatever it was.
Got it.
So I think people, but again, that extremism, that black and white, it can't be, oh, you get a donut one time as like, a reward or incentive. It was like, people are just going to eat donuts every day now. It was just this extremism, which we actually see in orthorexia and in diet culture, which is all or nothing, right? Either you're dieting or you're binging and pigging out and you're disgusting. Either you're thin or you are morbidly obese and overweight. Like there's no in between, so that whole thing about, donuts and people were obsessed with it. To me, it was very telling, like, why can't someone just have a donut? And let's say someone eats a donut every day for a year. Why are you obsessed with that? You don't have to eat a donut every day for a year. But when we're constantly looking at other people's plates and what they're eating, it's usually because we're feeling restricted ourselves, or we're feeling like it's not fair. Like, why should you get to eat a donut every day? That's not healthy. Like, if I ate a donut every day for a year, right? It usually comes from, I want that too, or I think that's like so bad. Why do you get to do that? And I think that's something for people to look at when we're judging other people's food choices. Where is that coming from? Why are you afraid of what they're putting on their plate? Why does that concern you? But I think that whole idea of like wellness culture is kind of built on this like elitist mentality, right? Where like, we're better than because we care about our health, because we're eating a certain way. Almond butter is better than peanut butter, when really almond butter is just more expensive than peanut butter, right? Nutritionally, they're probably about the same. So I think it's kind of built on this like more expensive way of eating rather than it's actually a better way of eating nutritionally. Right. I think that's important for us to look at. Like, where is that judgment coming from? Why do you care if someone has a donut or not?
Well, that's a great segue into one of the other signs, was spending time and money on meal planning and food.
And the vitamins and the supplements and the IV drips and the coffee enemas and the treatments and the maca powder and the bone broth. Like, there is so much that people get obsessed with in the pursuit of health, when sometimes that's actually really not healthy. Because if it's taking away time from your family, or it's taking away time from, going to social events that make you feel good, if it's taking away your enjoyment of the holidays, of a birthday party, of being present with people you love, of your performance at your job or whatever it is, that's not healthy. But again, it's such a narrow view of what health is. And that's really detrimental to us. How we, I think when people think of the word health, they have an image that comes into their head. It might be how you look, or it could be, they think of a salad, but when I think of health, I think of laughing. I think of joy. I think of rest. I think of holidays. I think of movement. I think of all of those things. And I think we need to really untie health from like those two little teeny things.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Like we've talked before about like blue zone diets.
Yes.
Often they're plant-based. But when you look at the studies and you look at where the blue zones are, it's not just their diet. That's like one part of it. A lot of it has to do with them still being active, physically active, and social interaction is incredibly important.
Family. They go for walks every day. Right. They're outside.
They have friendship networks, all of that stuff. So it's not just those. I don't even know if there's anything so magic. They're good They're good ways to eat.
Right.
But they're also very organic. They go along with where these people are living.
Right.
And what their resources are and what's available to them.
And I can imagine that people who are orthorexic just start to shut themselves off more and more. And this is when it really becomes a problem, when it crosses the line to have negative effects on their social life and then their health.
Right. And work and their involvement in they start dropping other interests because they don't have time for it.
Right.
Because of all the food
restrictions around them. Do you find that people become obsessive about exercise too in terms of, obviously other eating disorders, but in terms of orthorexia, do they rely on exercise then to compensate for maybe other food choices that they make?
Yeah, so it is associated with exercise addiction. We do see that a lot. And it's usually because, they have guilt. They'll have guilt about missing exercise and they're counting their calories and whatever it is that they're putting in their body. So they feel like they need to constantly exercise. Also, they'll have the calorie counter to see how many calories they burnt, whatever it is. Missing a day at the gym is like horrible and terrible. There's no days off, right? # no days off, no excuses. And again, like I say, days off are wonderful ways to support our health. And sometimes your body needs that,
right.
A wonderful form of taking care of our health is also rest. And it doesn't have to be hustle. But we're in that culture of like, if you're not doing something, then like you're not doing anything, right? And sometimes like not doing something is doing something, So we have this like obsession with like being busy and constantly like being focused on things and thinking and analyzing and doing and that's really not healthy. And thinking that like the gym is where we have to be 24/7, 365 and missing a day is like, you don't care about your health, or, over exercising before an event or before a holiday and then running to the gym the minute it's over to burn off everything you ate, I think that's a real problem that we see.
We all know people who are like that, actually. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I want to talk also a little bit about social media's impact on this, because obviously with social media, there's a lot more information coming out at us, and maybe orthorexia's attempt to control the messages by controlling food consumption.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, another criteria for orthorexia is obsessively following food and healthy lifestyle blogs on Twitter, on Instagram, like looking at that stuff, constant hashtags of clean eating, paleo, keto, whatever it is. And again, if people want to, eat in a certain way, if you're vegan or vegetarian or, whatever it is, again, there's no objective problem with that. But again, it's when it becomes an obsession of like, you are eating this way because you think that it makes you a better person, or because, eating other things is wrong. That's when it becomes a problem. So yes, we see on social media, what I ate today. And a lot of the time, the people that are posting these things are people that are in positions of a lot of privilege or wealth, or, there's a different class of people that are able to eat this way. And I think that it becomes like, if you don't eat like them, then there's something wrong with you. And there's a lot of pressure put on people to eat the same way that person that they're following is eating, because they also think, well, if I eat like him or her, I'll look like him or her. If I eat and move the same way that they do, I will. But that ignores genetics, that ignores socioeconomic status, that ignores so many factors that play into our health. And then what that does is it creates a lot of shame and self-blame and lack of compassion for ourselves, because we're like, well, I'm doing what she's doing. Like, what's wrong with me? Why don't I look like that? Why isn't my health getting better? Why am I not managing my chronic condition? Because she said she does celery juice and her Lyme disease went away. Like, how come I still have mine? Right. Or this person said they had cancer and, drank whatever every day, and like their symptoms were so much better and they didn't even need chemo. Like, how come that's not happening to me? And we've seen extreme cases where people won't go for treatments like cancer treatments or treatments for some kind of serious illness because they're convinced that food is medicine,
Right.
and that food will cure them, or that they could prevent illnesses or make their illnesses go away with food. And I don't want to downplay the importance of taking care of our health through nutrition, but there's so much that we cannot control with nutrition. And it becomes a very dangerous message when we follow people on social media that will tell us that food is medicine and that it can cure all your ills if you just, juice this or eat that or cut out that. It's really, really dangerous. And we've seen a lot of, negative consequences from it. We can see all kinds of health issues come up. We can see, malnutrition and all kinds of mental health problems that come as a result of that. So it's really, I think people need to be very wary of who they're following on social media. And while I think, listen, it could be that somebody started drinking celery juice and like their acne cleared up. And I'm not denying that. Maybe that really did happen for them, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen for you. And I think people need to kind of like take a step back and say, like, that's one person's story, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be my story.
Yeah. The other thing too, and I'm not saying people are lying on social media, but people do edit what they share. So I get this all the time.
Right.
There may have been other things.
It's only a small part also of their day. And you're right. They could be taking other things that may not be healthy to achieve that body.
Right.
They might be obsessive about it. Right. You're not seeing the whole picture on social media.
And also you're seeing a snapshot in time on social media. So you're not seeing, obviously you can't, but 10 years from now, like, what are things going to look like for them?
Right.
Or you're not seeing, 30 years from now when they have osteoporosis because they didn't eat correctly when they were younger. So, yeah.
We also don't know if it's even true. Right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Like, they could be telling you their depression is better because they, stopped taking meds and they're only doing yoga now, but we're not in their life every day. So we don't know if that's the case, So everything with a grain of salt,
Right.
So Rachel, when we've identified you, Andrea, somebody has orthorexia, how do they escape that? What's the protocol, the process? And I'm sure it's, multifaceted.
Yeah. So generally therapy and working with a dietitian who is intuitive eating, informed and aligns would be the best thing. And in therapy, usually what they do is they'll have, like, instead of good food and bad food, we have fear foods and safe foods, right? So what are the foods that you are afraid of, right? And you have to make that list. And for some people, it's very, very large. And what are the foods that you can eat? What are your safe foods? And basically, like, through exposure therapy, we get them to start eating those foods. And it's not all of them right away. And it's not in huge amounts. It could be like, if you're afraid of eating crackers, like, we have a little bit of a cracker in a session and we talk about what's going on for you and how does that feel? And, kind of just challenging your thoughts about what's going to happen to your body if you have those things, and learning to feel comfortable around those foods again. So exposure is a big piece of that. And then, working with a dietitian to make sure that you're getting what you need nutritionally, and slowly introducing those foods back in, because what does happen when you are actively engaged in orthorexia is you might actually have a hard time digesting certain foods. You might have, serious bloating, and it feels uncomfortable to eat these foods again because for so long you've restricted them, right? I mean, that's why we do see with people that have like eating disorders, we will see that they have a hard time with certain foods and they have digestive issues and they can't tolerate certain foods. And it's not because of there's something wrong with the food. It's that they've done damage to their body and their body just doesn't know what to do with it. So it's just slowly reintroducing those foods through exposures, a lot of support, And, you know, it takes time challenging those thoughts again about like what they believe about those foods.
Do you have people though that are like very resistant? Like they feel so virtuous and secure in the choices that they're making that they don't even want to hear about it?
Definitely. But I guess, you know, at that point, then they're clearly not ready for treatment, right? If they're so stuck in their way of eating, we're probably not going to get very far, you know? So it has to be someone who is realizing and is open to, the idea that perhaps like some of their struggles, either in their relationships or in their mental health or, you know, if they're seeing nutritional deficiencies, they're willing to explore, okay, maybe I am restricting too much and maybe this is really impacting my life in a very bad way and I need to look at it. So it could be that they're not ready 100% to bring back in, let's say, sugar or, you know, gluten or dairy or whatever it is, but that they're kind of open to seeing that what I've been doing until now is maybe not working. It takes time though. You know, it takes time. Usually there's like an aha moment that someone has that they realize like, okay, this is just not working for me anymore. Sometimes it's a family member that says like, I don't even know who you are anymore. And other times it's just, they feel so sick that they realize that whatever they're doing is not working and they need to just do something else. You know, they're like sick and tired of being sick and tired type of thing.
Yeah, that happens, I think, a lot with people who get very extreme about being vegan. They think they're being so maybe holy about it. And at some point, if they're not at least supplementing or kind of balancing things, their body starts to give out and the pendulum swings the other way. And they kind of realize that maybe they do need some animal protein in their life. So that I've seen a lot.
Yeah. You kind of answered it already. I was going to ask you, like, so like if someone has a friend or a family member and they see them on this path, how can they help them or help them realize it or bring it to their attention or share their concerns, you know, in a way that doesn't feel attacking, but
yeah. So
this is hard.
We have to be like very sensitive with these things. And I think that it always just has to come from a place of love and concern and not judgment, you know? So not even like picking on how they're eating, or you could even just say like, you know, I'm seeing a change in you. And even saying, I'm not even really sure what it is exactly, you know, but I do see X, Y, and Z behavior, right? So not saying you're orthorexic. I read a book. I'm diagnosing you. That right away, the defenses are up, right? But saying like, you know, we used to go out for dinner for your birthday or for our friends' birthdays, or once a month we would do dinner with friends. And like, now you don't want to come anymore, you know, because you don't want to eat anything there, or, you know, because you're afraid of what's going to happen at the restaurant, that you're going to be out of control. And I feel like we're missing out on stuff, you know, we're missing out on life. We're not getting to do the things that we used to do. Just kind of highlighting how that behavior is maybe impacting you, you know, because they might not care if they don't go to the restaurant, even though they probably do underneath, you know, but just kind of highlighting how it's impacting you, the loved one, and how it's making you feel concerned for them, what you're noticing, you know, and how it's kind of taking away the person that you know and love. And I think sometimes then people are a little bit more receptive to hearing that. It's not like there's something wrong with you. It's, I miss you and I care about you and I want to spend time with you, but this is literally stealing you from me. You know, I can't talk to you anymore because you're so busy like Googling, you know, the ingredients for this and that, or recipes that are not including this, that, and the other thing, you know, or if it's an extreme case where they're trying to like revamp the whole family and the kids are like starving because there's nothing to eat in the house, you know, then there could also be that discussion of like, listen, I respect that you want to make these choices for your body, for yourself. This is something you need, but like, it's affecting us. Like, we don't want to eat that way, you know? And if you feel like it's good for you, we'll respect that, but you can't put it on us. And I do see that often, certainly in families where, you know, one partner wants to adopt this way of eating and they want the whole family on board, and like the kids don't want to do it, understandably, right? Or the spouse doesn't want to do it. And then there can become that conflict. So there really needs to be that discussion of like, you have to, you know, I'll respect your choices that you want to eat a certain way, but don't put it on me. And I think sometimes people don't realize that getting on board with someone who, wants to cut out foods. They don't think it's going to turn into something extreme, but then slowly it does. And they're kind of like, shoot, like I thought this was like, we're going to be more healthy, like a healthy lifestyle. And now it's become torture and hell. And she doesn't let me eat anything and I have to sneak things. And during lunch, I go out and get a shawarma because she packed me this disgusting, whatever it is for lunch. And I don't want to eat it. And, and then it becomes like a real battle. So really just coming from a place of like how it affects you, what you're concerned about, and not labeling them with any kind of like, diagnosis or judgments or anything. Sure. I think people are a lot more willing to listen when we do it like that, coming from a place of compassion and care.
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great advice.
Yeah. Yeah. Any
very, very helpful.
Yeah. Any last minute thoughts, Rachel, that you'd like to share with our audience?
I do want people just to, think about, and this is something that I'm very passionate about. Like I had said earlier, like when you think about the words health, like just what comes to mind. And if the things that come to mind are just like a look, right? Or you think like exercise or salad for lunch, I really want you to like expand that definition and think about, how health can be so much more than that. Health, again, it's community, it's laughing, it's creativity, it's movement. We know that that they've done research on mortality and they've found that people that have like loving relationships, safe relationships, actually live longer. John Gottman, he's a marriage and a therapist and does a lot of research on relationships, has said that people that have loving relationships actually have better health outcomes than people that go to the gym all the time, right? So you could be like a gym rat and you're watching everything you eat, but like you have no friends because of it. And you broke up with your boyfriend and your parents don't want to talk to you because you're nutso and whatever it is, and then maybe you're someone that isn't obsessed with that stuff, but you have loving relationship, community that you're involved in, supportive peers and a job that you love or whatever it is, or, you have some of those things or all of those things, and you have better health outcomes than someone who's, engaging all those good behaviors. So I really want people to just really think about when you're engaging in any behavior in pursuit of health, is this actually good for me? Is it something that's enhancing my life or is it taking away from my life? Is it making me more present in my life or is it taking away my presence from my kids, from my family, from my friends, whatever it is? We have a very narrow definition of health. And I think it's getting more narrow with time. And I really want us to just like expand on it again and realize again that mental health, right? I'm a little biased because this is what I do, but mental health is so important. And even if you don't have great physical health, if you have your mental health, you can still live like a wonderful, fulfilling life. And I think people need to pay attention to that. Like it's so much more than how our bodies look and what we put into them. It's also how we feel and what we tell ourselves. And so that compassion and that kindness is really, really important.
Yeah, that's great.
That is great.
That.
Me too.
Rachel currently offers her services in her Cedarhurst, New York office for kids and teens ages 5 to 18, adults and women experiencing infertility, pregnancy loss, and post-hysterectomy. She also is available for speaking engagements for schools, synagogues, and various community organizations. Rachel, where can people find you?
So I am on Instagram at Rachel_Tuckman_LMHC. Most of what I post on Instagram is also on my Facebook page. I'm less active on Facebook, but you can look up Rachel Tuckman LMHC on Facebook. I have a website where all of my content is also available on there, racheltuckman.com. And those are the best ways to get in touch with me and see what I'm talking about.
Great. Just want to remind everyone that you can follow me on Instagram at Jill H. Scharfman. I want to thank our engineer, Mike Casantini at the Network Studios. You can also find us on Schmoozy, which is a social media app. Our full episodes of our podcast are there, as well as forums if you want to talk more about our episode topics. Thank you so much, Rachel, for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And that is it for this episode of Let My People Eat. Please visit our website at letmypeopleeat.com and leave us a comment. Get in touch at our email at podcast@letmypeopleeat.com or call us at 317-659-0004.
We are also on Facebook. Search for Let My People Eat podcast to join the discussion. You can ask questions and suggest topics you'd like us to talk about in future episodes.
If you like this show, Please make sure to leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes and tell your friends and family to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. Let My People Eat is proud to be part of Jewish Coffee House, where you can find your fill of stimulating podcasts dedicated exclusively to Jewish content.
Please remember that while we are certified professionals, this is not a medical advice podcast. No content, posts, or comments should be interpreted as professional guidance. Always speak to your own doctor about making the right life changes for you.
Until next time, I am Jill Schartman.
And I am Andrea Moskowitz.
Thanks for joining us, and go in good health.